This is my last day at sunny Orange Beach before I go home tomorrow. And I want to tell you a story about what happened in my church a few years ago. I got to church one Sunday morning about 2 hours early so I could pray and make some last minute preparations. When I got there, I immediately looked up on the stage and there was no musical equipment there. I went, uh-oh. So I walked around the church on the inside, walked around outside, and obviously somebody had broken in a side door. So it had been raining a little bit that morning. I called the sheriff's department, and they came out. And I said, well, it looks like they went in right here on this side door, and they took that 4x6 right there and busted that glass. He said, allegedly. I said, okay. And I said, they came in here and they went up and stole that musical equipment. He said, allegedly. I said, okay. So we walked back outside, and being the ground was still wet from rain, I said, and there's their footsteps, and it looks like there's about 2 or 3 of them, or maybe more. He said, allegedly. I said, okay. So I said, well, they're going this way, and it looks like they're bogging down like they're carrying a load. He said, allegedly. So I said, well, I'm going to follow this. He said, well, I don't know if I'd do that if I was you. I said, I am going to follow this. Well, there was a trailer park not too far from there, and I followed it right up to a trailer. And guess what? There was an air conditioning unit right outside the door. And I said, and there's their muddy shoes, and it's the same prints as it was at the door. And he said, allegedly. I said, well, whatever. I'm fixing to go in there and get my equipment. He said, you can't do that. I said, I can't? He said, you don't have a warrant. I said, I'm not a cop. I don't need a warrant. I'm just going to bust in there and get my stuff. And he just standing there, he said, I wouldn't think that's a good idea. And I said, I'm going in. I said, you can do whatever you want. So I went in, and sure enough, there's the musical equipment. There's the guys all sitting right there in the living room talking to one another, laughing about what a good job they stole all that musical equipment. I said, sir, that's my musical equipment. If you don't mind, would you please arrest him? That's the evidence. So he did. And about a week or two later, granddaddy of one of the boys called me up, and he said, look, my grandson was one of the ones that stole your equipment, and he is exceedingly sorry. Is there anything you can do for him? I said, well, I don't know. They're all in jail. He said, I know. He said, can we make restitution in some way? I said, well, I got my equipment back. I said, let me talk to the district attorney and see. He was a friend of mine. I graduated high school with him. He said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, let him be under my care for 6 months. Come in here and work every day, and except on Saturdays and Sundays, and as long as I need him, and then he can just work this off, and he won't have to spend any time in jail, if that's all right with you. He said, it works for me. So somebody asked me, said, well, what happened to the rest of them? I said, I swore I pressed charges against them for stealing. He said, 2 or 3 people said, why did you do that? Why don't you have mercy on him and let him go? I said, hold on just a second. Y'all need to understand something. There's breaking God's laws, and then there's breaking the laws of the land. Now, all of them broke God's law because they stole, right? Breaking and entering and stealing is also an offense against the state. So they were arrested because they broke the laws against the state and against me. One of them repented. The rest of them did not. I didn't care if they stayed there in jail and rotted. Now, I know that sounds hard, but the truth of the matter is there's people get all confused about this mercy and grace. Those guys didn't want mercy. They didn't want grace. They wouldn't repent, and I had no feelings for them whatsoever. Guess what that young man did that repented and came back and did the work? His granddaddy bring him to church every day. About 2 years later, he called me on the phone. He said, Brother Smith, I want to thank you for what you did for me. He said, I found me a sweet little old girl. I got married, and looks like we're going to have a baby. And I want to thank you for having mercy on me on that day. And I said, buddy, you did the right thing by repenting and getting right. And I look back on that and I go, you know, people can get right if they want to. But for some reason, they get stiff-necked and hard-headed, and they don't want to repent. do their drugs and do stealing and all that kind of crazy stuff, well, that's on them. They got to pay the price. And hopefully their punishment will be enough that will keep them from doing it again later in life. But this little guy, he wound up being a responsible citizen. I was so proud of him, and I was so glad I had mercy on him. God bless you guys, and go in peace. Love you. Bye.